In a world overrun by infected creatures, survivors search tirelessly for a place of refuge, a sanctuary. It is the one thing that keeps them going. The hope of finding a spot where hunger doesn't consume their thoughts, and fear of the infected is a distant memory. But not all safe zones are what they seem. Some are beacons of humanity built on shared struggles and self-sufficiency. Others, they're deadly traps, designed to lure the desperate and keep them locked in a false sense of security. In this world, sanctuary is a word that can either save you or destroy you. The word sanctuary carries a weight that no one who's lived through this nightmare can ignore. To some, it's a glimmer of hope, a place where safety and peace still exist amidst the chaos. To others, it's a deadly illusion. These safe zones are advertised as havens, but not all of them are what they claim to be. If you're lucky enough to find a true sanctuary, it feels like a small piece of the world before everything fell apart. But for every genuine refuge, there are a dozen others that will tear you apart the moment you trust them. True sanctuaries are rare but real, and they give survivors something worth fighting for. Heaven's Peak is one such example. Nestled high in the cliffs of a remote mountain range, Heaven's Peak stands as a beacon of hope. The fortified walls, impenetrable by infected hordes, protect the self-sustaining community within. Survivors here work the land, grow their own food, and have access to clean water. Power is generated by a wind turbine, and even the smallest luxuries, electricity, heat, are a reality. They don't just survive, they thrive. The people of Heaven's Peak have made it a home. To enter, though, is no easy task. Every newcomer undergoes strict vetting. The community is careful, almost paranoid about who they let in. But once you're part of the family, you're protected, safe from the horrors that lurk outside. Then there's the Iron Dome, a military installation turned survivor outpost. Originally built as a defense against foreign threats, it now stands as a testament to human resilience. Run by an ex-military commander who defected after the Red Horizon bombings, the Iron Dome combines military discipline with compassion. It's a place where survival isn't just about staying alive, but about rebuilding what's been lost. Here, people find purpose, security, and a future. They have supplies, trained soldiers, and a deep sense of community. However, much like Heaven's Peak, entry isn't guaranteed. The Iron Dome values trust above all else, and those seeking refuge are carefully scrutinized before being allowed to enter. These sanctuaries offer hope, not just in survival, but in the chance to restore some of the humanity we've lost. Yet, not every so-called sanctuary deserves that name. Full sanctuaries are abundant and even more dangerous. Places that seem to offer safety but ultimately hide dark secrets. Take Paradise Valley, for instance. Survivors flocked to it after hearing promises of endless resources and protection from the infected. When they arrived, the valley appeared just as advertised. Walls, guards, and even a functioning farm. It seemed like heaven on earth. But the truth came out when those who couldn't contribute were escorted away, never to be seen again. It turns out the guards weren't protecting anyone. They were controlling them. And when the time came, they fed those who couldn't work to the infected, keeping them away from the main gates, ensuring that no one would leave. It was a paradise, all right. One built on fear and exploitation. The Lighthouse Refuge is another infamous tale. Perched on a seaside cliff, it was advertised as an unassailable haven. But the infected had already reached the tunnels beneath the cliffs. One night, as the survivors slept, the infected swarmed. There were no warnings, no escapes. It was a massacre. The refuge, built to offer safety, became the final resting place for every soul within. The glass tower, located in the heart of a decimated city, lured survivors with the idea of a high-rise sanctuary. Surely, the height would protect them. But the infected are relentless. They never stop, and the desperate humans around them can be even more dangerous. Raiders scaled the tower, picked off survivors, and used them as bait to lure the infected away. Those who escaped only lived to warn others of the horrors they witnessed. It was a tall promise, but it couldn't protect against the greed of other humans and the tenacity of the infected. These false sanctuaries prey on the weak, the desperate, the hopeful. They exploit our trust, our fears, and our desire to return to a world that no longer exists. They are a cruel reminder that not everyone who offers safety is a savior. In this world, the line between safety and danger is thin. It's easy to let hope cloud your judgment. But remember this, when the word sanctuary is spoken, question it. Look for the signs, who is running it, what's the cost, and how do they keep the infected out. Trust your instincts. Not every sanctuary is what it seems. The real sanctuary is the one you build for yourself. Whether it's a fortified cabin, an underground bunker, or just a group of trusted individuals, your safety is your responsibility. It's about finding peace in this broken world, one piece at a time. In the world we now inhabit, survival isn't just about the fight against the infected. It's about the choices we make, the alliances we form, and most importantly, the places we choose to trust. Not every sanctuary is a safe haven. Some are far more insidious. They promise refuge, but deliver nothing but death. These stories, these warnings are etched into the memories of those who have escaped them. They are living testaments to the danger of misplaced trust. Let me tell you some of them. Take Ian's story, for instance. He thought he'd found salvation when he followed a group of survivors to a place called Hidden Valley, a rumored sanctuary deep in the mountains. The group had heard the promises, safe shelter, food, and no infected. For a while it seemed perfect. They arrived to see high walls and watchful guards. It looked like heaven compared to the hell they'd been through. But the closer Ian got, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. The guards were too eager to see the newcomers work, and the tasks they were assigned seemed endless. Soon the cracks began to show. Those who couldn't contribute, those who fell ill or couldn't keep up, were sent away. Ian and a few others heard rumors about the outskirts of the sanctuary, a place where the guards took people, but they never came back. One night, Ian witnessed something he couldn't ignore. He watched, heart pounding, as a group of those who had been deemed useless were escorted beyond the gates. The next morning, Ian saw their bodies, mutilated, scattered at the edge of the wilderness. It didn't take long for him to realize that Hidden Valley wasn't a sanctuary. It was a death trap designed to weed out the weak, feed them to the infected, and maintain a false illusion of safety. He escaped, barely, with nothing but his life and the haunting knowledge that not all sanctuaries are what they seem. Then there's Lila's experience. She was just a young woman when she sought refuge in a place called the Old Hospital. It had been advertised as a sanctuary for the sick and wounded, a place where the suffering could find rest and safety. Lila, struggling with a fever that had left her weak, thought it would be a good place to recover. But from the moment she entered, something felt off. The doors locked behind her, and there was an unnatural silence that hung in the air. She was told to rest in one of the back rooms, and she did, hoping to recover. That night she woke to a low hum, a noise that seemed to reverberate through the very walls. She tried to leave, but when she approached the door, it was locked. Panic set in. As she turned to find another way out, she realized she wasn't alone. The infected were already inside, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. She barely had time to scramble to safety, hearing the screams of others in the halls. By the time she managed to escape, the hospital had already been overrun. She's lucky to be alive, but the experience was a brutal lesson. Places that claim to offer safety may very well be the last places you'll ever be. Marcus thought he was immune to these kinds of tricks. A seasoned scavenger, he'd learned to read the signs. He thought he could spot a trap from a mile away. That was until he encountered the glass tower, an imposing high-rise in the center of what was once a thriving city. The survivors who lived there told him it was safe. The building was high, they said. The infected couldn't climb it, and the view from the top provided an overview of the entire city. What could go wrong? Marcus didn't trust the place. Not entirely, but after a long trek across an infected landscape, he was too tired to be cautious. He entered the tower, and at first everything seemed as advertised. The survivors were polite, well-fed, and friendly. There was even talk of reinforcements and supplies being delivered in the near future. But soon the cracks started to show. The survivors weren't just friendly, they were desperate, as though they were hiding something. One night, after a few too many drinks with the survivors, Marcus overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. They were not just trying to survive, they were trying to control the others, to keep them from leaving. They weren't protecting people from the infected, they were keeping them locked in a cage. It wasn't long before the true nature of the tower revealed itself. The infected couldn't scale the walls, but the raiders had figured out how to. They began scaling the building, cutting off escape routes, and using the survivors as bait to lure the infected. Marcus had no choice but to flee. The others, they were left to their fate, trapped between the infected and their own kind. He was lucky to escape, but not all of the survivors did. Full sanctuaries are clever. They play on the vulnerabilities of those who are desperate, broken, and seeking any shred of safety. They exploit our hopes, our fear of the unknown, and our need for community. These places thrive on the notion that we are willing to trust anything that seems to offer shelter. But the cost of that trust can be your life. Every survivor has a story, a lesson learned the hard way. There are others too. Those who thought they found safety, only to discover too late that the walls they trusted had become their tombs. Claire's story, Victor's story, and so many more. They all end the same way. A false promise, a deadly trap. So what can we learn from these stories? Be cautious, don't trust too easily. Before you follow someone to a sanctuary, ask yourself, what's the cost? Who runs this place? What are they hiding? And most importantly, can you trust them with your life? The world may have gone to hell, but that doesn't mean we have to lose our sense of judgment. After hearing the stories, Yen, Lila, Marcus, and countless others, it's clear that the world we live in has taught us one harsh truth. Not all sanctuaries are safe. The danger of falling into a trap is always present. You might hear the word sanctuary, and for a moment you might feel a glimmer of hope. But the truth is, trust is a luxury we can no longer afford. In this world, safety doesn't come easily, and it sure doesn't come without cost. But how do you know if the place you're walking into is a true sanctuary, or just another trap waiting to spring? Let me break it down for you, survivor. There are signs, certain clues that can help you distinguish the real sanctuaries from the deadly ones. The gatekeepers, who runs the sanctuary. In every sanctuary there is leadership. The question is, what kind of leader is at the helm? A true sanctuary will have a community-based system, a group of survivors working together, making decisions collectively. If the leadership structure revolves around a single person, especially one who demands complete loyalty, be cautious. Real communities value autonomy. They understand that survival doesn't come from blind obedience, but from cooperation. Beware of places run by tyrants or military figures who demand absolute control over every aspect of your life. These kinds of leaders often hide their true intentions behind promises of security, but in reality they are simply consolidating power. Consider Haven's Peak again. It's not run by a single dictator, but by a council of community members who all contribute to decision-making. The vetting process for newcomers is strict, but it's not about keeping power for themselves. It's about protecting their people from both the infected and potential threats within. They've worked hard to build trust, and that's what keeps the sanctuary running. That's what a true sanctuary looks like. Twin transparency and defenses. A genuine sanctuary will not shy away from talking about its defenses. It will be open about how it keeps the infected out and what measures are in place to protect the people within. Whether it's high walls, weapons, or surveillance, a real sanctuary will have a clear, well-thought-out strategy for defense. If you're met with vague answers, or if they seem evasive when you ask about the sanctuary's security measures, that's a red flag. 3. The price of entry. Nothing in this world comes for free. and that includes safety. A real sanctuary will ask for some form of contribution, whether it's work, supplies, or something of value. But the key is balance. They won't ask for everything you have just to let you in. They understand that survivors are already stripped of so much. A true sanctuary will offer you a way to earn your keep, contributing to the greater good of the community without exploiting you. 4. The reputation of the place. Before you even set foot in a sanctuary, talk to people who've been there. Survivors travel, they share stories, and word spreads. A real sanctuary has a reputation built on respect, trust, and cooperation. If you ask about a place and hear mixed responses, especially if some of those responses involve things like forced labor, secrecy, or disappearances, then listen closely. Those are the places to avoid. When I spoke to survivors about the Iron Dome, there was only praise. People who came from there spoke about it with a sense of pride, knowing they were part of something greater than themselves. It wasn't perfect, but they believed in it. They trusted the leadership and the safety it provided. Compare that to the whispers I heard about places like the Lighthouse Refuge, where survivors spoke of horror and not hope. It wasn't just the infected that killed them, it was the people who promised protection and took everything from them. Drive your gut feeling, trusting your instincts. Sometimes all the signs in the world can't tell you everything. You'll get a feeling when something isn't right. Trust that feeling. If something about the place feels off, even if you can't quite put your finger on it, don't ignore it. The world we live in now has taught us one thing. Our instincts are often our best defense. If a sanctuary feels too perfect, if it seems too eager to accept you without question, or if the people there seem too composed, ask yourself why. What's really going on? 6. Exit strategy. Always have one. In a world full of traps, the one rule that can save your life is this. Always have an exit plan. A true sanctuary will offer you a way in and a way out. There should be multiple exits, and they should be accessible. If a place traps you once you enter, or if leaving feels impossible, then it's not a sanctuary, it's a cage. Never walk into a place without knowing how you'll leave if things go south. This may sound paranoid, but it's the truth. Even the safest looking sanctuaries can turn on you when you least expect it. As we navigate through this wasteland, survivors often talk about the infected, the mindless, relentless creatures that roam the earth. We know them. We understand their patterns. They hunger, they attack, they infect. But in the midst of this nightmare, something new has emerged. Something faster, smarter, and far more dangerous. They're not like the rest of the infected. They are the hunters, and they have changed the way we think about survival. It started quietly at first. Whispers from survivors on the outskirts of the forgotten town. At first, we thought these reports were just more exaggerated tales. But the truth soon became impossible to ignore. The hunters are real, and they are different. They move with an eerie precision. They don't stumble or shuffle like the infected. They stalk, they study, they hunt. One of the first reports came from a survivor named Marcus, a scavenger, who encountered a hunter while searching for supplies in an old grocery store. He had heard rumors about the infected evolving, but he never expected to come face to face with something like this. When Marcus turned a corner, he saw it crouched low to the ground, its eyes glowing faintly red, locked onto him. It didn't lunge immediately. Instead, it studied him, almost as if calculating the best moment to strike. When it did pounce, it crossed the aisle in seconds, faster than any infected Marcus had ever encountered. He barely managed to escape, and when he returned to his group, he could barely speak. The terror wasn't just in the speed of the attack. It was in the way the hunter operated. There was no mindless frenzy. There was no panic or confusion. This creature was deliberate, calculating, and unnervingly intelligent. And Marcus wasn't alone in his experiences. Other survivors began to report similar encounters. The hunters weren't just random mutations. They were something new, something engineered. The question that kept me up at night was simple. How did the hunters come to be? Were they just another mutation caused by the virus? Or were they something far worse? Something engineered? Some believe that the hunters are a natural evolution of the virus, the next stage in the infected's transformation. They're faster, more agile, and possess a higher level of intelligence than any infected we've encountered before. But others, including myself, suspect something darker at play. It's no secret that before the outbreak, Gen X Dynamics was working on a variety of biotechnological advancements projects that pushed the boundaries of human and viral capabilities. I've heard rumors, whispered in the dead of night, of experiments designed to enhance human abilities, soldiers who could run faster, fight harder, and think quicker. What if the virus didn't just spread randomly? What if it was tailored to enhance specific traits in its hosts? What if the hunters were the result of an experiment gone horribly wrong? Some survivors believe the hunters were created intentionally by Gen X, or perhaps by those who sought to weaponize the virus. These creatures are no accident. They're too coordinated, too intelligent, too strategic to be anything but a product of human intervention, and that makes them even more terrifying. They're not just driven by hunger. They hunt for sport. They hunt because they can. I've heard disturbing stories of hunters stalking survivors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They don't attack indiscriminately. They wait. They observe. They've even been reported to use basic tools, rocks, sticks, anything they can get their hands on to create distractions or break through barriers. In other words, the hunters are learning. They're adapting, and that makes them a far greater threat than any mindless infected we've faced before. Emily was one of the first to encounter them in the woods. She and a small group of survivors thought they were safe, hidden deep in the forest. But one night they heard a tapping sound, faint at first, like fingernails against glass. When Emily and her group investigated, they found themselves face to face with a hunter. But this wasn't like the regular infected. It didn't come crashing through the trees. It was silent, almost ghostly. The group tried to lock the doors, but the hunter slipped through a crack and took out 2 survivors before anyone even realized it was there. The rest of the group fled, terrified. These creatures are not just faster and smarter than the average infected. They're also incredibly silent, moving in bursts of speed so quick that most survivors don't even realize they're being stalked until it's too late. The hunters are predators. Pure and simple, they're faster than any human, more agile than any infected, and their ability to track and outthink their prey is what makes them the true apex predators of this world. But how do you survive an encounter with a hunter? The truth is, your odds aren't good. These creatures are relentless. They are built to track, chase, and kill. But there are a few things you can do. First and foremost, avoid the shadows. Hunters thrive in darkness, moving quickly between the trees or across rooftops. Stick to well-lit areas where they have less chance to ambush you. If you hear one nearby, freeze. Don't move unless you absolutely have to. The hunters are drawn to sound, so make sure every step counts. If you do find yourself face to face with a hunter, aim for the head. It's the only way to take them down. These creatures are fast, but they're still vulnerable in the right spots. And don't waste time aiming anywhere else. Hit them where it counts. Numbers can also work in your favor. Survivors have reported that hunters are less likely to attack large groups. If you're with others, stick together. But remember, these predators are smart. They know how to outmaneuver groups, so don't get too comfortable. The most important advice I can give you is this. If you see those glowing red eyes in the darkness, run. It's too late. Don't stop. Don't hesitate. Just get away. The hunter is coming for you, and it won't stop until it catches you. There's one final question that haunts me. What do the hunters want? Unlike the infected, who are driven by nothing more than hunger, the hunters seem to have a purpose. They've been observed targeting specific individuals, almost as if they're following an instinct, a plan. Some survivors think they're hunting for sport. Others believe the hunters are being controlled, maybe by someone or something. But what and why? The rise of the hunters has changed everything. They are no longer just another stage of infection. They are something else entirely, a new breed of terror born of the virus, but also shaped by the hands of those who sought to control it. They are fast, intelligent, and more terrifying than any infected we've encountered before, and they're not going away. We need to learn everything we can about them, because ignorance will get us killed, ignorance will get us killed, ignorance will get us. The first time I encountered the hunters, I didn't know what I was facing. At first, it seemed like just another wave of infected, faster, more dangerous, but still part of the same terrifying apocalypse we had all come to know. But over time, as the reports grew more frequent, and the survivors who faced them described their encounters, it became clear that the hunters weren't just another mutation. They were something different entirely, something engineered. I've spent countless nights trying to piece together the origins of these creatures. From the stories of survivors who survived their encounters, I've come to a chilling conclusion. The hunters were never a random mutation of the virus. They were created, and not just by nature. No, they were the result of human intervention, a twisted experiment by those who believed they could control the virus. Somewhere in the ruins of the world, in the abandoned labs and forgotten research facilities of Gen X Dynamics, something went horribly wrong. The company, once a leader in biotechnology, had been working on a variety of projects, including the enhancement of human abilities and viral weaponization. But the creation of the hunters wasn't an accident. It was the result of years of experimentation, experiments that were meant to push the boundaries of what humans and viruses could do together. I've spoken to survivors who ventured into the wreckage of Gen X labs. They've found strange documents, files detailing experiments that shouldn't have existed. These documents spoke of Project Genesis, a program designed to create the ultimate weapon, a creature that could move faster, think quicker, and survive longer than any human. The goal wasn't to just create an enhanced soldier, it was to create the perfect predator. The virus, as deadly as it was, would serve as a tool for this purpose, amplifying the physical and cognitive abilities of its hosts. But it didn't end with Project Genesis. As the virus spread and the world descended into chaos, Gen X saw an opportunity. The infection, as terrible as it was, could be a means to an end. If the virus could be controlled, manipulated, turned into a weapon, then humanity could hold dominion over the very creatures that had caused the apocalypse. The hunters were the first success of this twisted ambition. They were engineered to be predators, faster than any regular infected, stronger, and most terrifyingly intelligent. But intelligence, it seems, is a double-edged sword. These creatures weren't just zombies with more speed. They were calculated with an ability to think and plan, something that no one had anticipated. Survivors who have come face to face with the hunters tell me the same thing. They hunt with purpose. They move in bursts of speed, darting from shadow to shadow, patiently stalking their prey, learning their movements, adapting to their environment. The infected, at least the ones we're used to, are driven by primal hunger. But the hunters are different. They're driven by instinct, but also something more. They observe, they wait, they plan, and when they strike, it's calculated. There is no blind frenzy. There is only precision. This level of strategic thinking makes the hunters incredibly dangerous. In some cases, they've been observed working together, coordinating their attacks, cutting off escape routes, and even using basic tools like rocks or sticks to distract or manipulate their prey. A survivor who had a close call with a pack of hunters said it best. They're not just hunting us, they're testing us. They're learning from us. But what's worse is that the hunters aren't just the product of the virus. They are evidence of a greater plan. Gen X Dynamics wasn't simply trying to create faster infected. They were attempting to evolve the virus itself to adapt it for human use. The virus, when enhanced and refined, could make soldiers predators even more powerful, more effective. And if they could weaponize the virus, then they could sell it to the highest bidder, using it to create a new order. one in which the infected weren't mindless killers but tools that could be controlled and deployed at will. The genetic manipulation that led to the creation of the hunters was part of a larger experiment to enhance human capabilities. According to documents found by survivors in the ruins of Gen X labs, early experiments were focused on enhancing strength, speed, and agility, human traits that could be augmented with the virus to create a super soldier. But somewhere along the way, the focus shifted. The goal was no longer about improving humans. It was about creating something beyond human. The hunters were the result of the shift in focus. They weren't just enhanced humans. They were monsters designed for one thing only, to hunt and kill. And the worst part is, the hunters are just the beginning. The more I dig into the remnants of Gen X's research, the more I realize how deep the rabbit hole goes. The creation of the hunters was the first step in a series of experiments that were meant to evolve the virus. To make it perfect, survivors have found references to other projects, experiments that were even more disturbing than Project Genesis. There are whispers of hybrid creatures, experiments designed to merge human DNA with that of the infected, creating superhuman predators with the intelligence of humans and the ferocity of the virus. In one of the reports I found, a scientist described an experiment known as Project Harbinger. It was meant to create a creature that could move faster than a hunter, one that could not only outthink its prey, but outmaneuver them as well. The goal was clear: to create the ultimate weapon. The hunters, as horrifying as they are merely the first generation. There are hints that Gen X had plans to go further, to perfect their creation. But here's the thing. The virus evolved beyond Gen X's control. The hunters were supposed to be the ultimate predators, but they've shown signs of independence, of resistance. They no longer follow the plan Gen X set for them. They have adapted to the environment in ways that the scientists never anticipated. They are evolving on their own, and that makes them even more dangerous than they were ever meant to be. I've spoken to survivors who have had close encounters with the hunters. Some believe that the virus itself is conscious, that it's evolving towards something even more terrifying than we can imagine. It's no longer just a virus. It's a force, a weapon that we can't control. And that means we are no longer fighting for survival against mindless infected. We are fighting against something far worse, something that thinks, that plans, and that will stop at nothing to ensure its survival. The true purpose of the hunters isn't just to survive. It's to reign over the remnants of humanity. They are a part of a larger experiment, an experiment that has spiraled out of control, creating creatures that are both our predators and our replacement. What was once intended to be a weapon of war has now become something far more terrifying, an unstoppable force that will shape the future of this apocalypse. As survivors, we can only do one thing now: adapt. We need to learn everything we can about the hunters, about their origins, and about the true scope of Gen X's experiments. Because in the end, the more we know about them, the better our chances of surviving what's coming next. As if the rise of the hunters wasn't enough to make us question everything, a new terror has emerged on the horizon. These creatures don't hunt with speed or stealth. They impose their will, controlling and directing the chaos with a terrifying sense of purpose. They are the wardens, and they are far different from the hunters. While the hunters are predators designed to kill with intelligence and precision, the wardens are enforcers, creatures created to control the infected, to manage the chaos that the virus has unleashed on the world. The wardens are larger than the hunters, grotesque in their size and appearance. Their bodies are patched together, almost like some twisted mockery of human form, with muscle and flesh that seem to have been stitched together. They move with a slow, deliberate pace, but their presence is overwhelming. When they approach, the air seems to freeze. Survivors who have encountered them describe a feeling of dread, an instinctual fear that comes over them when the warden enters the area. Unlike the hunters who move in bursts of speed, the wardens are patient, taking their time, studying their environment as if every step serves a purpose. One of the most disturbing aspects of the wardens is their ability to speak. It's not coherent speech, not in the way we understand it, but guttural, broken phrases that seem to echo the remnants of their human intelligence. Survivors have reported hearing wardens say things like return, control, or even call out specific names. Names of survivors they seem to recognize. The idea that these creatures are communicating is enough to send chills down your spine. It's as if the virus that controls them hasn't just taken away their humanity, it's twisted it, making them something else entirely. Some survivors believe that the wardens were the first of Gen X's experiments. Before they created the hunters, they were attempting to craft something that could control the infected, not just kill them. Gen X's goal was clear. In a world overtaken by the virus, someone had to keep order. The wardens were designed to be those enforcers, standing above the infected, ensuring that no chaos would break out. They were meant to be leaders, the shepherds of the infected, not mere animals driven by hunger. But like everything Gen X touched, their experiments spiraled out of control. As with the hunters, the wardens didn't remain bound to their creators' programming. Something happened. Something that changed them. They began to develop independent thought, a twisted sense of purpose that went beyond what Gen X had intended. They started to direct the infected, controlling their movements, guiding them like a master directing an army. In some cases, survivors have even reported seeing wardens leading groups of infected, controlling the flow of the horde and making strategic decisions as though they were in command. The most terrifying thing about the wardens, however, is their resilience. Unlike the hunters, who can be taken down with a well-aimed shot to the head, the wardens are nearly indestructible. They can take bullets and still keep moving, their bodies reinforced by the same twisted biology that gives them their strength. Close combat with a warden is a death sentence. These creatures are built to survive, and nothing seems to faze them. Survivors have described attacks where they shot the wardens repeatedly, but it was like shooting a wall. No matter how much damage they inflicted, the wardens kept coming, their purpose unbroken. One story I heard from a survivor named Claire is particularly haunting. She was traveling with a small group near what used to be Denver when they stumbled upon a field covered in bodies. All of the bodies were arranged in a perfect circle, a strange pattern that didn't make sense. At the center of this circle stood a warden, motionless as though guarding the bodies. Claire's group tried to sneak by, but when the warden turned its head slowly, deliberately, and let out a low, guttural growl, they knew it wasn't just a creature. It was something more, something that recognized them, something that could think. They fled as fast as they could, but Claire swears she heard the warden say something as they ran. Victor, another survivor I spoke to, had an even more horrifying encounter. He was taken by the wardens to an old Gen X facility, where he witnessed something he can never forget. The wardens weren't just keeping the infected in check. They were experimenting on humans, using them as test subjects in some twisted form of control. He managed to escape, but not before hearing one of the wardens speak. "You are not ready." That phrase has haunted him ever since. It's clear to me now that the wardens are not just the enforcers of the apocalypse. They are something more sinister. They are the remnants of Gen X's failed experiments, a form of crowd control gone horribly wrong. But what's most terrifying is the possibility that the wardens are still following some fragment of their original programming, something that drives them to manage the infected, to enforce a twisted order in the chaos. Some survivors believe that the wardens are merely advanced versions of the hunters, a further evolution of the virus, while others think they are a complete separate creation. There's even a theory that the wardens and the hunters are at odds, competing factions of the virus, each with their own agenda. But whatever the truth is, the wardens are a force to be reckoned with. They don't hunt like the hunters. They don't kill for survival. They enforce their will, and when they do, it's in a way that leaves no room for rebellion. If you ever find yourself face to face with a warden, do not try to fight. These creatures are nearly invincible. Avoid eye contact. If you lock eyes with a warden, it may trigger an attack. If you see one, run. That's the only chance you'll have. The wardens are the enforcers of this new world, and they will stop at nothing to ensure that the infected and anyone who dares defy them remain under their control. When the hunters first emerged, they struck fear into every survivor who crossed their path. These predators, with their speed, intelligence, and calculated attacks, felt like the ultimate evolution of the infected. But as the days wore on, something even more terrifying began to emerge from the shadows. The wardens. Larger, slower, but somehow even more ominous, the wardens weren't just creatures of the virus, they were its enforcers, controlling the infected and imposing a twisted order on the chaos. As I dug deeper into their origins, I couldn't help but wonder, are these two creatures connected? Is there a deeper link between the hunters and the wardens? At first glance, the hunters and the wardens seem like they couldn't be more different. The hunters are quick, agile, and deadly, using their intelligence and speed to hunt down survivors with frightening precision. The wardens, on the other hand, are much slower but far more intimidating, with their grotesque, hulking bodies and the eerie ability to command the infected. They don't hunt, they enforce. They're not just part of the apocalypse, they control it. But as I dug deeper into the twisted web of Gen X dynamics experiments, the possibility that these two creatures are more closely tied than we ever imagined started to emerge. The origins of both creatures, both the hunters and the wardens, are products of Gen X Dynamics, the biotech company that started it all. They were the ones who, before the outbreak, experimented with genetic manipulation and viral weaponization. Their ultimate goal was to create weapons, perfect soldiers capable of carrying out missions without the need for rest, food, or emotional attachments. The hunters were the first success of their twisted experiments, predators that could think, hunt, and kill with intelligence and precision. But the wardens were an even more terrifying creation. They were designed to control the infected, not just kill them. Gen X's early experiments focused on creating a kind of virus enforcer, a creature that could manage the infected, ensuring that the chaos of the outbreak didn't spiral completely out of control. The idea was to have a leader figure within the infected hordes, someone who could organize, direct, and enforce order. The wardens were meant to be the shepherds of the infected, guiding them like a twisted version of a pack leader. But in their attempt to create order, Gen X created something far more sinister. Here's where things get interesting. The hunters and the wardens may have started as separate experiments, but their paths soon merged in unexpected ways. The evolution of the virus. The virus, initially designed as a bioweapon, began to evolve in ways that Gen X couldn't control. It's no longer just a mindless infection that spreads randomly. It's a living, breathing entity, adapting to its environment and becoming more intelligent with each passing day. Survivors have reported strange behavior from the infected, coordinated movements, communication between infected groups, and a disturbing sense of purpose in their attacks. Some survivors believe that the virus has gained an intelligence of its own, one that goes beyond the control of Gen X's experiments. What if the hunters and the wardens aren't separate creations, but two parts of the same system? The virus could have evolved to create two distinct classes of infected. The hunters, who are the apex predators, and the wardens, who impose control over the infected population. These two classes, while different in their roles, may be part of a larger system of control, a system where the wardens direct the hunters, using them to manage the infected and ensure that chaos doesn't erupt into total anarchy. Survivors have reported strange sightings, encounters where the wardens and the hunters appeared to work together, or at least in tandem. I've heard stories of wardens directing the infected, herding them into specific areas where the hunters would then go on the hunt. In some cases, the hunters appeared to be following the wardens' orders, almost as if they were being commanded by them. This raises a chilling possibility. What if the wardens are controlling the hunters? What if the hunters are just another tool in the wardens' arsenal, used to maintain order among the infected? The possibility of a hierarchy. This theory that the wardens and hunters are part of a hierarchy, with the wardens as the leaders and the hunters as their enforcers, gives us a new understanding of the virus. It's no longer just about survival or mindless infection. The virus has evolved into a system with its own order and structure. The wardens aren't just creatures that happen to be bigger and stronger. They are the commanders of this new world, and the hunters are their soldiers. Together, they form a terrifyingly efficient system of control, ensuring that the infected don't lose their purpose or direction. One survivor, Daniel, described an encounter that might shed some light on this theory. He was hiding in a safe zone when he saw a warden standing atop a hill, flanked by a pack of hunters. At first, the hunters didn't attack. They simply stood still, waiting for something. Then the warden gave a low growl and the hunters sprang into action. They hunted down the survivors nearby, but there was something unsettling about it. The way they moved, the way they coordinated, it was as if the warden had given them an order, and they followed it without hesitation. The warden's control over the hunter. If the wardens are indeed controlling the hunters, it changes everything we thought we knew about survival in this world. The hunters are no longer just independent predators. They are part of a larger virus-driven plan. The wardens and their grotesque, deliberate movements are using the hunters as tools to control and subjugate us. This is a nightmare we didn't see coming. We thought the hunters were the worst of it. Their speed, their intelligence, their ability to track us down. But if they are being controlled by the wardens, then the real danger isn't just the hunters themselves. It's the entire system that has been created, a system of control that uses the infected to enforce its own twisted order. The wardens are more than just enforcers. They are the masterminds behind this new infected world. They are not just imposing their will on the infected. They are shaping the virus itself, directing it in ways that benefit their purpose. The question is, what is their purpose? Are the wardens following the remnants of Gen X's plan, or are they working towards something even darker? Conclusion: the virus has a purpose. At the end of the day, the connection between the hunters and the wardens suggests that the virus is no longer a random disaster. It has a purpose. The virus isn't just spreading, it's evolving, creating a new world order with the hunters and wardens at the top of the hierarchy. And the survivors are just pawns in a larger game. If we are to survive, we need to understand this new order. The hunters and the wardens are not just creatures to fear. They are the first signs of a new system, a system that has been shaped by the virus and its creators. We need to learn how to fight back, how to disrupt their control, because if we don't, we will be nothing more than tools in their twisted plan. If there's one thing I've learned from surviving in this new world, it's this. The truth is often buried under layers of fear, lies, and blood. In the chaos that followed the outbreak, survivors have been left with nothing but questions. How did this happen? Why are the infected evolving? Who or what is behind all of this? As we piece together our fragmented existence, one thing is becoming clearer than ever. Gen X Dynamics is at the heart of it all. Before the outbreak, Gen X was a biotech company hailed as a leader in genetic research and viral therapeutics. Their stated goal was to enhance human abilities, cure diseases, and even combat aging. They promised to revolutionize medicine, but behind the polished corporate image and the scientific jargon, something far darker was unfolding. They weren't just working to heal the sick. They were toying with forces beyond their control. They were trying to create superhuman abilities, to design the perfect biological soldier, and to weaponize the virus for purposes we could never have imagined. The virus itself wasn't some natural disaster. It was created, a man-made disease engineered by Gen X in a series of covert experiments that were supposed to change the course of human evolution. But as with everything they touched, they didn't anticipate what would happen when they played God. The virus mutated, evolved, and spiraled out of control, wreaking havoc on the world, turning people into mindless infected and creating creatures like the hunters and the wardens. But there's more. Much more. The virus itself wasn't just an accident. It was designed with specific purposes in mind. Gen X wasn't just trying to create a weapon. They were trying to reshape the world. According to documents and research reports I've come across, the virus was intended to be a tool for control. not just of the infected, but of humanity itself. Gen X wanted to create an army, a new world order where they could call the shots, using the virus to control everything from the infected to the survivors. They wanted to build a society where their creations, the hunters, the wardens, and the infected hordes, would maintain order while they ruled over the chaos they'd unleashed. There are leaked reports that describe the early days of the virus. It was called Project Genesis, an attempt to merge human DNA with viral strands to create a biological weapon that could be controlled. They envisioned soldiers who needed no food, no sleep, no rest, soldiers who could be deployed in any environment, from the battlefield to disaster zones, and remain effective without ever faltering. The goal wasn't to create mindless flesh-eating monsters. It was to create super soldiers capable of fighting wars, keeping control, and enforcing order wherever needed. They saw the virus as a way to make humans more resilient, stronger, faster, smarter. But the experiments didn't go as planned. As the virus spread, it mutated beyond Gen X's control. The hunters were the first result of this evolution. Originally, they were designed as enhanced soldiers. But somewhere along the way, the virus turned them into predators, creatures with intelligence, with instincts, and an ability to hunt and kill with terrifying precision. They were no longer the soldiers Gen X had envisioned. They were something far worse. They were the perfect predators, intelligent, strategic, and fast. The very thing they had set out to create had turned on them. And then came the Wardens. The Wardens were designed not to be predators, but enforcers, a way for Gen X to maintain control over the infected. They were meant to be the leaders, the commanders, the ones who could direct the infected hordes and keep them under control. They weren't just mutations, they were programmed to lead, to organize, to enforce. But like the hunters, they too evolved beyond their original design. The Wardens didn't just lead, they began to impose their will on the world. Not just the infected, but the survivors as well. They became agents of control, and their eerie ability to speak, to command, and to direct the infected made them even more terrifying than the mindless hunter. Gen X dynamics had their hands in all of this, but their ultimate goal was never just to survive or rebuild. They wanted to reshape society, to use the virus as a means to control the remnants of humanity. When the world collapsed, they didn't stop their work. They retreated into the shadows, continuing their experiments in secret, trying to perfect the virus. They didn't care about the consequences. As long as they could control the outcome, they were willing to sacrifice anything and anyone in the process. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. Gen X isn't gone. We've seen their footprints all over this nightmare. Abandoned research facilities, drones still hovering in the sky, remnants of their experiments in every corner of the world. They've been watching us, waiting. The virus they unleashed was just the beginning. The truth is, they never lost control of the situation. They are still working behind the scenes, trying to perfect what they started. And now we are left to deal with the aftermath. But what if they aren't just watching us? What if they are still orchestrating the chaos? I've come across documents that hint at something even more disturbing. Project Harbinger, an experiment to create hybrid creatures, even more dangerous than the hunters and the wardens. These hybrids were meant to be the ultimate weapon, a being capable of surviving anything, defeating anyone. Survivors have reported strange sightings, grotesque creatures with the size and strength of wardens, but the speed and agility of hunters. They are the next step in the virus's evolution, and they are much worse than anything we've faced so far. Gen X, it seems, wasn't just experimenting on the virus. They were experimenting on us, the survivors. They were trying to create a new breed of human, a new breed of infected, and in doing so, they crossed a line they could never have anticipated. The virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool for reshaping the world into their vision. But here's the biggest question of all. What happens if Gen X succeeds? If they perfect their creations, what kind of world will we be left with? A world where the infected are no longer mindless and uncontrollable, but intelligent and coordinated. A world where the survivors are ruled by the very virus that destroyed us. I don't know the answer, but one thing is clear. The fight for survival is far from over. The virus, the hunters, the wardens, they're just the beginning. And as long as Gen X exists, as long as they continue their work, there's no telling what horrors are still to come. As I sit here piecing together the grim truth about the world we now live in, one thing keeps running through my mind: hope. It's something we cling to even when it feels like it's slipping through our fingers. Hope is a double-edged sword. It keeps us going, but it can also blind us to the dangers that lie ahead. In this broken world, hope is all we have left, and yet it's the very thing that could get us killed. The question is, how do we hold on to hope without losing ourselves in the process? The truth is, the world as we knew it is gone. The virus, the infected, and the twisted creations of Gen X dynamics have reshaped everything. Survivors are scattered, fighting for survival in a world where every corner holds new horrors. The hunters and wardens are just the beginning. The remnants of Gen X's experiments have created creatures and forces we couldn't even have imagined before. They've created a new kind of apocalypse, one that goes beyond the outbreak itself. But in the face of all this, there are still those who resist. There are still those who believe that survival is possible. Not just survival in the physical sense, but the survival of what makes us human. Hope isn't just about finding safety. It's about finding meaning in a world that has lost its way. It's about rebuilding, even if the odds are stacked against us. I've spoken to many survivors over the years, some who have lost everything, some who have found new families in the ruins, and some who have just barely held on to their sense of self. They all have one thing in common: they haven't given up. Even in the darkest moments when it feels like the world is closing in on them, they keep fighting. They keep looking for a reason to wake up every morning. And that, my friends, is the true power of hope. Heaven's Peak, the Iron Dome, and all the other sanctuaries that have emerged, they represent a flicker of that hope. These places aren't perfect, and they come with their own dangers and compromises, but they stand as symbols that humanity can endure. We can rebuild, we can make new lives for ourselves in the midst of this chaos. But that can't happen if we let fear and desperation cloud our judgment. We can't build a future if we're too afraid to look beyond the next day. The hunters and the wardens are not just mindless creatures, they are part of a system designed to control and destroy everything we hold dear. Gen X dynamics, with their twisted experiments, created these monsters in the name of power. They sought to manipulate the virus to their advantage, to build an army that would keep humanity under their thumb. But in doing so, they unleashed something far worse than they could ever have imagined. The virus evolved. The infected evolved. And now even the hunters and wardens seem to be evolving beyond the control of their creators. But here's the thing that keeps me going. They can be beaten. We've seen it before. Humans have a remarkable ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight back. It's not about taking down the hunters or the wardens in a head-to-head fight, though that might happen if we're lucky. It's about understanding them, about learning how they work and using that knowledge to turn the tables. If there's one thing we have that Gen X didn't count on, it's our resilience, our ability to rise above the horrors they've created and forge a future from the ashes. Hope in this world isn't about waiting for someone to save us. It's about taking action, about finding the strength to build something new, even when everything around us is falling apart. It's about community, about working together to rebuild what was lost, even if we have to fight every step of the way. That's the last hope we have. Each other. The wardens and hunters are terrifying. Gen X's experiments are beyond comprehension, and the world we live in is more dangerous than ever. But we're still here. We're still alive, and as long as we have breath in our lungs, we have a chance to fight back. We can't let the monsters they've created win. We can't let them dictate the future of humanity. We have the power to take back control, to reclaim the world that was stolen from us. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: hope is a weapon. It's the weapon we need to survive. Not blind hope, but hope backed by action, by the will to fight and adapt. It's the hope that keeps us going when the darkness feels overwhelming. It's the hope that drives us to keep searching for sanctuaries, to keep pushing through the nightmares, and to keep fighting for a future that's worth living for. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The last hope is not just in finding a safe place, but in knowing that we can still build one ourselves. We are the last hope for humanity, and it's up to us to make sure that we don't just survive, but that we thrive. This is Joe Henry signing off. Stay safe, stay strong, and keep fighting. The world is broken, but we don't have to be. As long as